One of the things that I'm thankful for in life is the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is called the Wisdom Book. And the book of Proverbs is the entire focus, or the main focus, I should say, of the book is on how we deal with fellow man, how we deal with each other, how we interact, how we handle each other, how we communicate with each other, how we identify each other. It talks about a lot of different characters. And so, but there's one verse that I want to just talk about it a little bit, because when we're thinking about making a difference in the world, impacting the world for good, and that's what the world needs, a lot of it, good influence. And ministry, that's what we want to do, is to influence the world for good. And that's, of course, in general, but that is channeled out on individuals. Every individual, we want to influence them for good. And there's Proverbs 29:18. I want to just talk about that for a little bit. It says, where there is no vision, the people perish. It says, but he that keeps the law is happy. And so where there is no vision, the people perish. When we think about vision, there's a difference between Old Testament visions and New Testament visions in a sense. Old Testament, God a lot of times gave visions to prophets, and that was generally to carry a message to the people. But not so much the message, but the process and how it was to carry, or God showed the condition of the people in the vision. And so many times they would see something, they would see a line hanging from heaven or anything like that. What do you see? God often would ask. I see a plumb line or something like that. God would just open their eyes. But going back, what is a vision? A vision is where God allows us to look through his eyes. That's what a vision is. Because it's just allowing us to see what he sees. And so if it wasn't for visions, like all the visions that have happened throughout history, our faith would be so different. It would be almost like a dead faith. And so many times throughout history, God has allowed people to look through his eyes and see something that he wants them to see. Then we jump to the New Testament, and a couple of key visions that we have is the vision that Paul had on the road to Damascus, and the one that Peter had in Joppa on the roof. Those are two visions that are very commonly known in the New Testament. There was different visions that there are. And so, but when we look at visions, and there's teachings going around about we need to have a vision and stuff like that. But what was the vision? When God opened the eyes of someone to get them to see something they didn't naturally see. Because there is a way on how we naturally view. I loved where this blind man comes to Jesus, and he puts mud on the eyes, and he says, "What do you see?" And he says, first he doesn't see anything, and then he says, "I see men as trees." And then he does it again. He touches them again, and then he says, "Now I see clearly." But when you think of men as trees, what is trees? One of the things about trees, it's background. When you look at the forest, it's the background. And see, he says, "I see people as the background." Like, I don't see individuals, I see just the background. And then God touched him again, and he says, "Now I see people clearly." And so God opened the eyes where he would see people the way people are. And sometimes people to us are just a background. You drive in the city and you see people everywhere and they're just a background. what we do in life. And so, but here God says, when there's no vision, the people perish. In other words, when we just look at mankind through our own eyes, the world will perish. In order for us to make a difference, we have to have a vision. We have to see something that only God sees. We have to see people the way God sees them. And God has to open our eyes for that. But here's the other key thing about a vision. And so as long as we will just naturally see people, whether as the background or as the crowd, we don't see souls that are in desperate need of God. Or we don't see people as intense sinners like God sees them, or where they're at, the way God sees them and describes them. As long as we see people just through our own eyes, the world will perish. But secondly, when God gave a vision, when he gave a vision to Paul, when he gave a vision to Peter, it wasn't just to see something, but to do something about it. That's God's intent. Sometimes we want a vision, we want to see. But a vision was always something specific to fulfill a responsibility. And if we want to make a difference in the world, as long as you just see through your own eyes, you're not going to see the importance of ministry, the importance of gospel meetings, the importance of sharing the word, the importance of living right, the importance of sacrifice. We won't see that until God opens our eyes to it. As long as we just look through our own eyes, we just see people in a natural sense, and the world will perish. We have to see deeper than what we see naturally. But not just to see deeper, but to see what does God want me to do to make a difference? And so my question to you, how do you see people? How do you see the world? Do you just look through your own eyes, or has God shown you something that you say, boy, there's a need there, and I have to do something about it? He showed Paul, he opened his eyes and he showed him. He showed Peter. He says, boy, he used the animals in the sheet. And he said, he showed him that all people can have God. And so Peter had to go, and it was to line up Peter to go and speak to Cornelius, to open the door to the Gentiles. For Paul, it was to get him to minister to the Gentile people. And so if God has not opened your eyes, you will just see through your eyes, and you will approach life through your perspective. But once God has shown you something, then you can make a difference in the world.